Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover This Face Off SE. It's another Best of the Rest special edition, and this time we're looking at the magazines we missed in July of 91 and 92. This covers 2 Amiga Actions, a CU Amiga, an Amiga Fun, an Amiga Power, a Zero, as well as an Amiga Mania. Fight! Let's start in 1991 with Amiga Action, with its 2 discs and 3 demos. And it kicks off with a big one, R-Type 2. The arcade game is here, and unfortunately it seems to be completely silent. Which is a bit of a shame, as the original R-Type sounded great. But this mostly looks the part, and outside of when things get a little busy, it is pretty good and smooth, even if I'm not the best at it. But we do get a few upgrades, including the classic R-Type bit, and there's even a boss fight to deal with. But it is just the first level of the game, but it is a decent chunk of the title, and it would have given you a good idea of how the final game is going to play. So outside of the sound, there's not much to complain about here. The next demo is Logical. That gives you very little hints on how to play the game, and the magazine decided to waffle about just about everything else other than the game in the section for the demo. But the goal of this puzzle game is that you need to fill a circle with all the same coloured balls. And when you do that, the balls within will vanish and the wheel will change. Now you need to do this with every wheel, but it can be whatever colour you like. That is, if you can actually get them there, as on some of the later levels they will gate some of the areas off. Now the controls aren't too bad once you've worked them out. Right click rotates the wheel, and then clicking on the ball itself will make it move on. Now you will get some indicators on how many free balls you can have at once, what colour is coming up next, and yes, there's not 1 but 2 timers. One tells you how long you have left overall, and the other is how long you have to try and grab the new ball that will be bouncing around the top of the screen, because you have to keep the pressure on at all times when you're trying to play a nice fun puzzle game. This is an interesting puzzler. Once you've grasped the basics, it isn't too bad at all, but this one didn't grab me as much as I was expecting, as I'm usually a big fan of puzzle games. This one just felt like there was a bit too much going on at once, and those timers really didn't help. Their final demo is for Aminos, another shooter, but this time an original Amiga title, and it's a multi-directional one at that, where you have to move this very odd looking craft around an even odder looking landscape, with all sorts of things to shoot at, using an interesting array of weapons. But wow, that frame rate. I don't know if it got improved for the final game, but here it is quite bad. Now as you're going around, you might even find some humanoids that you can rescue, and eventually a boss might even appear. And it all felt a bit random and chaotic, if I'm being honest, which includes the main weapon, as sometimes it seemed to fire loads and others very little, with not much in the way of indication of why. Now I'm sure there's someone out there who knows exactly how you're meant to play this game and can do it very well, but it's not me, not after a couple of goes anyway. But I did enjoy my time with it, and I did like the fact that the health bar is a version of the ship on the side of the screen and it slowly vanishes. Let's move on to Zero, the multi-format magazine that contained the same full game for both the Amiga and Atari ST, which was Steel. One that I'd never heard of before, and when in game we find something that, well, it looks like it could have been a tie-in for the film Black Hole, as those robot designs feel very reminiscent of the film. And what you're meant to do is not exactly clear or easy to guess from the start, as you can just float around and then shoot in either direction, which is done by holding the fire button and then pushing in that direction, as we continue to just try and find our way around this sci-fi setting. But it turns out what you need to do is travel around this ship and try and collect the 8 cartridges, and you'll then have to deliver them to the slots. But before you can do that, you'll also have to find terminals that you'll have to interact with, and then complete a mini game that requires breaking down the shields of this DB port and then taking out the main bit in the middle. This should then open up areas in that slot room and allow you to place the cartridge. But all while this is going on, there will be many enemy robots just spawning in at random to mess with you. Now they might shoot at you, just bounce into you, and all of which will use up some of your energy. And obviously, they aren't quick to take out either. You also have to be moving to shoot, which effectively means you're always moving towards the robots as they're moving towards you and you're trying to take them out. This is easily the worst part of the game. Now I don't mind trying to work out a maze to find everything, and I don't mind having the odd baddie show up, but when they're constantly showing up and are always trying to whittle down your health, it is very annoying. Now you can recharge it at fuel stops, but guess what? Yes, they will keep respawning while you're trying to get your health back. Now I do think it's a bit of a shame, as this looks really quite nice, and the basics of the game works really well, but it's just a little too annoying to be fun. Now it got middling reviews when it came out about a year and a half earlier, and I can get why it's on this magazine. Now this is a game I could have seen me playing and enjoying back then, but it's one that I might have completed once and then never touched again. It's time for some power, as Amiga Power has a single disc packed with 2 demos and 3 PD games. And let's start with Exile. That is a remake of the BBC micro game, and it is awesome. But it's also quite the game to try and make a demo of, as the full thing is a huge open-ish world. Similar in many ways to Metroid, if you made it massively more complex. And I'm not even joking here, as on top of the joystick controls that allows us to move our jetpacked hero around, there is a wide range of keyboard inputs as well. As you can pick up and store items, you can throw them at different angles, you can duck, scroll around the screen and teleport, as well as so much more. And that teleport system is also extremely important, as you cannot die in this game. If you lose all your health, then you'll get teleported back to the last place you either set yourself, or back to the starting ship. Now if you've played any versions of this game before, you might have noticed that the ship is different, and that is because this is a unique level made just for this demo that is significantly smaller than the full game, which is extremely cool. This means it's much easier to find the gun, and then you can just fly around, all while trying to avoid the birds, the mines, the asteroids that are all flying about as well, and you'll have to dive into the caverns and try and find the objects and where to use them to get past doors and other obstacles. All while the map slowly reveals itself to you. The controls will stump you for a while, but once you get a handle on them, they do work reasonably well. And I do think this game would have benefited from a controller and a little bit of simplification. But this is a great game and an incredible demo. Looking at the PD, and we get Tiles, a Mahjong solitaire style game, but not using the more traditional tiles. But the basics don't change. Pick 2 tiles that are the same, and if they aren't blocked by other tiles, then they will be removed. Keep doing this until you either mess up and can't remove any more, or you're good enough and you clear the whole lot. Now this is reasonably well made. I do wish that the layers were more clearly defined, and it was possibly a bit faster in its redrawing. And those constellations, well, they could have been made a little bit more different, so you could spot them more easily. But this is the type of game that I would have wasted hours playing. Frantic Freddy. a single screen collect 'em up platformer, in which you have to avoid the enemies and pick up the items to progress. Now this is made a bit harder by the fact you can't just walk past ladders, you have to travel up a ladder to be able to go over the top of it and then go back down the other side. Now this does take a bit of getting used to, and it seems that this is based on a classic C64 game that was about 8 years old at the time, and to be honest this does look as if they might have taken the graphics from that version and used them. But it is a simple and playable game, even if it is very easy to mess up, as you have really no way of defending yourself, so if a baddie travels down a ladder at just the wrong time, you are screwed. Amoeba Invaders. Yeah, it's this well done version of Space Invaders that has been shown a few times previously, as it's an accurate and as basic a version of the arcade game as you are going to find. You have the shields that you can shoot through, you have the invaders slowly coming down the screen, and then there's the spaceship that you can shoot for extra points. All given a reasonable graphical style and released for free. And for their final demo, it's Prehistoric, a platformer from Titus, which isn't always a great sign, and I'm not sure it's a good one for this game, to be honest, as it's 1991 and they're still releasing Amiga platformers with flip screen scrolling, and our main character that's looking and feeling a little clunky to move, as it's not very smooth, is it? To progress, you have to move back and forth between the screens to try and find your way around the spikes and try and progress forwards. Thankfully the nasties can be taken care of, as you can bash those dinos, and if you do that enough times, then well, they get knocked out and they can walk over them to finally remove them from the level. And that will also top up your food meter, that I don't think has much of an impact on the demo, but it might be something more important in the final game. Now this level is extremely short and you should finish it on your first attempt. And while it has some nice music and for the most part it looks decent enough, I didn't really feel compelled to check out the full title. Are you ready for some fun? Amiga Fun, that is, that always had a full free game on the cover. And this time it's for Norse Gods, or to give it its full name, Norse Gods Won't Give You Diamonds. A game that only ever got given away with this magazine, and it's pretty much a take on Columns, just not quite as well done. The gems themselves, well, they look a little off. I think they might have been 3D rendered along with the UI, as it's got that odd pixelated look that I wouldn't expect an artist would have done directly, and because of that, they aren't as distinct as I might have liked. What I also don't like is how connected the gems are, as if you put one on an overhang, it will stay there, much like Tetris. But when you do remove a row of 3, then they will move down. Now one interesting addition is that the screen wraps around, and you can put them half off one side and on the other. Now each level has its own goal with how many gems you need to clear it, and outside of a 2-player mode, that's pretty much it. It's nicely enough done and it's got some stereotypical music for the genre, but it's not quite good enough as the game it's based on. Let's move on to 1992, and first up again is Amiga Action, that across its 2 discs we got 2 demos and 5 PD games, and it all kicks off with Liverpool, which is not directly based on the town but its football team, as it can't be a cover disc episode unless I have to play a football game. And it's funny that the magazine boasts of how big and generous this demo is, with there being no time limit, and then goes on to say it's 2-player only and you only get up to the point you score your first goal. The action is presented in this 3D into the screen style, with some nice texturing like effects going on the ground, with what looks like it might be 3D drawn lines as well. The pitch itself, well, it also appears to be quite large, as sometimes these do feel a little small, so it can take some time to move around. And with it being 2-player only, it is hard to judge the rest of the game, as you can just run around with the ball, and it's just the goalie that you have to worry about. Now the players seem to animate nicely enough, and overall it does appear to be decent. But this was never going to be a game or demo that I was really going to enjoy or really check out. Bug Bomber. Now this is a take on Bomberman or Dynablaster if you will, and feels like what you'd get if you decided it needed to be far more complicated, as the default action when you press the fire button isn't to drop a bomb, instead it's to build a wall. To drop a bomb you need to hold down the fire button and then press up. And the idea in this single player mission is to take out all the nasties that are roaming the maze. That quite often is going to take more than a single bomb to take out. But you do have a few other abilities to help, as you can drop mines that should explode when the enemy walks over it. There's the Thunderbolt that will fly in the direction that you're pointing in. And there's also this searching unit that starts off as an egg before turning into something else that I wasn't too sure what it's used for. But collecting it did appear to put your health up, so maybe that's it. And yeah, you do have energy, so you can touch enemies for a limited amount of time. Now I do enjoy these types of games, even in their single player form, but I feel this one tried just a little bit too hard. Checking out the PD, and we start with Jumper, a basic Frogger clone that we've seen before, and it has very little in the way of animations, but they do mix up the audio as you make your way across the screen, but it is also missing the bits from the arcades, like the turtles moving up and down in the water, and the flies and spiders showing up in the holes. And while it's fine for a free Frogger clone, I just don't really care for it. Go Moku, a shareware game that we've also seen previously. It's a skill game where you have to place stones to try and form 5 in a row. Now you get to play against the computer or a human opponent, and if you do play against the computer then it will win. It would have been nice if there was some music or sound effects, but that might come with the upgraded version if you manage to buy it from them. Now this does look nice, it plays well, and it's fine for a nice bit of shareware. Asteroids. I don't think it'll take much to guess what this is based on. And it is a nicely done version of the arcade game, with wireframe style graphics that match the original. And there is just about everything you'd expect from Asteroids, with nothing really added. So if you enjoy that, then you'll have a lot of fun here. Super Twintris, the greatly enhanced version that features 2-player modes. Or you can just play on your own with some fancy effects going on in the background. And that spinning text is a little distracting, but you can turn that off if you wish. There's also options to play one of 3 different music tracks, all of which suit the game quite nicely, with some flashing lines that go along the bottom of the screen in time with the music. The basics are the same as any version of Tetris. Clear lines to earn points. The more lines, the more points. But it does allow quite a generous amount of aftertouch when the blocks land at the bottom. Now this is a great version, much better than any of the commercial ones we saw on the Amiga, but it's not as fancy as some of the later PD versions that I've seen. Turbo Duel, a version of the Tron light cycles, but with a bit of flair, with stars flying around in the background and some very chrome looking UI, and music. But it is still 2-player only, which makes recording footage for it much harder than you'd like, as you start off with both lines heading towards each other. If you've got a mate to play against, then it's not bad, but I would prefer something I could just boot up and play on my own. I think it's now time for some Amiga Mania, the other magazine that like to give away a full free game. And with this one being Dungeons of Avalon, a dungeon crawler game that likes to take things to the next level by letting you build a party of 6. And I do like the little animated touches to those portraits. Now once you've picked your party and then left the town, for the dungeon we get to see the game proper. And we get the standard interface for moving around, and with you being able to look at and change details on all your party members through a very simple interface. Now the dungeon itself is drawn well enough, and there's some nice atmospheric sound effects going on in the background. But battles are played a little bit differently to some of the games that I've played before, as you'll get a choice if you actually want to fight, and then you'll have to give each party member its orders for the fight. It will then run through those in order, giving you highlights of the fight in the text box at the bottom, with a summary at the end. You might even have to answer the odd question if you manage to get deep enough into the dungeon. I did find this quite an interesting game, even if I'm not a huge fan of this style of RPG, as it appears to have quite a lot of depth and options, but it's also simple enough that you can really just get into it. Even if some of it hasn't been all that well translated from German, like the compass reading O when you're going north. Or the change rank is really change order. But for a game that you got free with a magazine, well, okay, for a game that you bought that came with a free magazine, it's not that bad. Just keep a bit of graph paper to hand so you can draw out a map as you go. And finally we have See You Amiga, that across its 2 discs we have the regular bit of software and 2 demos, and that full program is for Octamed Pro 3. Now we all know that I'm useless when it comes to music, and if you don't, then welcome to the channel. I hope you enjoyed the almost 60 episodes of Cover This Face Off that has been uploaded so far. Now this was one of the biggest music making programs for the Amiga, that allowed you to use the 4 channels that the Amiga provided and load in samples and play them back with various effects. Now they only provided a single demo song with samples needed to play it. So you might have been off to a bit of a limited start with this disc, but CU did like to give away samples with some of its other cover discs. So you might have had some already, or you could look forward to getting some very soon. But they couldn't really provide too much more with this disc, as they also needed the space to provide a patch for the GB root software that they gave away the previous month. At some point I'm really going to have to try and find someone to do a proper review of this and some of the other music making programs, as I'm sure my very rudimentary abilities at using them isn't showing them off in the best light. But I did find it quite funny that CU Amiga included a bit of music that seemed to advertise one of their main rivals. For the demos we start with Zool, that I know isn't everyone's favourite game, but I am a bit of a fan of it. And this actually is a bit of an interesting demo, as while it starts off looking like the first level, it does have some changes, and the more you get into it, the more differences that you will find. Like the music sounds like a slower version of what would end up in Lotus 3, but I think it also has a bit of a slightly different middle bit to it. I do much prefer the final song, but it is cool to hear a variation of it. Now one big change that I didn't notice at first is that the items that you pick up are used to power up your weapons, as that percentage amount in the corner drops with each fireball that you fire. Now this indicates that at one point this wasn't a collect 'em up game, as the magazine only mentions that you need to make it to the exit, and that the confectionery is just ammo. They also made a change to how the specials work, as in the final game they'll just activate as soon as you pick them up. Now that might be a double Zool or invincibility, but now they're held onto, and you'll need to find a potion that you can then trigger by holding down and then pressing the fire button. Now this might mean that this is quite an early demo for these sorts of huge changes. There's also the odd glitch here and there, like some missing ground, or getting points out of thin air, but that might just be the quality of the discs, as you can get weird glitches when they don't load in properly. Another thing that I noticed were these very pixelated larger versions of some of the smaller items that ended up being bonus points. And they were much smaller than the large polo that we get in the final game, but it is quite cool to see more of them around. Now this would have been a really cool demo to have played back then, but I'm enjoying it just as much now, just to see all the changes that they made. And finally, we have Risky Woods, quite a visually appealing platformer that has you heading along the side of a set of mountains, attacking skeletons and other nasties that are getting in your way. Now the main character does have a bit of a stilted walk, but it does react and move well enough. And while those baddies do keep spawning all the time, they do also drop gold and are easily taken down. I'm not sure if the gold is all that useful in the demo, but you can collect quite a lot of it. You can also collect other items as well, some of which do that classic Euro platformer thing, like flipping the screen or reversing the controls, or even just putting you out to sleep completely. But others do seem to help you out instead. But it does feel a bit random, with I swear the same icon doing different things at different times. I'm sure there is some logic to it, and I'm just not getting it at the moment. But maybe one of you can explain to me what's going on here. I also found that there's parts of a key that you need to collect that will open up a door later on. Now, this does feel like quite a fun game with some nice music, and I'll have to check it out in more detail later. And there we have it, the magazines we missed the first time around, and a few interesting games there, I'll think you'll admit. So what were my top 3? Well, in third, Dungeons of Avalon. I'm not normally a big fan of dungeon crawlers unless it's hired guns, but this was nicely drawn and seemed easy enough to play. Second is Zool. Yeah, I think we all guessed that this was going to make the top 3, but I do think it deserves it due to all the changes that we got to see in its early development life. And first, well, it had to be Exile, an absolute favourite of mine, and it's a unique level, which made for an easy first place. You just gotta go check it out. And do you think I got it right? Let me know in the comments, and before I go, I'd like to thank my amazing Patreons who help videos like this get made. And if you'd like to join them in getting behind the scenes details, getting to see your name on screen, and best of all, being able to view these videos a week early and advert free, then you can join them for free. There will be links in the description. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was
Press Amiga Power.
And this was Goldfish on Games.